right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our third session of Data Camp this morning. This session is going to cover using technology to make your life easier, creating fillable forms, online forms, and using Excel formulas to analyze data. Our presenter for this session is Shannon Oliver. She is the Manager of Outreach and School Partnerships here at the Montgomery campus. Throughout her presentation, if you do have questions, feel free to drop those in the Q&A section of this WebEx, and we will answer those throughout the presentation if it pertains to that particular slide, and we will have time for questions at the end as well. Shannon, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Dallas. So I hope that you guys have gotten some good information from your presentations so far. Mine is going to be a little bit different. A lot of the presentations in the past have kind of been focused, or earlier this morning have been focused on how to find data and how, to create plans for data and things like that. What my session is going to be, it's a little more of like a training session. So I have spent a lot of time over the years teaching myself and learning how to use technology in a lot of different ways, specifically to make things easier on myself. And so that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to touch on 3 different things that I feel like are important things that I have learned over the years that I can use. And so we will kind of go through each of those, and then I'll make this presentation available via email if you need it. If you're like, hey, that was really good information, can you send that to me? Just let me know and I'll be happy to do that for you. So just a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Shannon Oliver. I'm the Manager for School Partnerships and Outreach at Lone Star College-Montgomery. I have been here since 2015. I started here as a part-time outreach advisor. I was out in the schools recruiting students, getting them registered as students here, and then also I was working as a dual credit advisor, and so I was helping with that entire process. In 2017, I became the manager for School Partnerships and Outreach, and now I have a fantastic team that I work with that does all of those same things. The reason that this kind of came about, this trying to find ways to manage all of the data, is that we have a very, very large population that we serve. We have 17 high schools, and we are the second largest dual credit population in the system. And so we have a team of about 4 people, and we have to be able to manage all of that, and we have to do it efficiently. And so I'm all about efficiency and making sure that we can get as much done as we possibly can. So with that being said, I will dive right in. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is how to create and edit a fillable form in Adobe PDF. And then we will go into using an online form to complete your PDF and get it done online entirely. And then we will finish up with how to use VLOOKUP and how to use that tool to your advantage when you're looking to compare data on 2 different spreadsheets that may not be on the same one. So first things first, creating and editing a fillable form in PDF. So this is something that I use all the time. And we used it a lot specifically during the pandemic. When we had a lot of paper forms, we were very used to passing out forms to students, having them fill them out and get them back to us. And that was just the norm. When we had the pandemic, we had to pivot. That's the word of the year, right? We had to pivot to doing everything electronically. And while I could have waited for somebody at System Office to create that fillable form or something like that, I went ahead. This was a really handy tool to be able to know how to do on my own. So it's actually it's probably more simple than you might think. When you get your form that you want to create into a fillable form, all you have to do is open it into Adobe PDF. If the form is not already in Adobe PDF, you can do it. You can open it in there by just saving that form, if it's a Word document or a JPEG or something like that, as Adobe PDF, and then you can open it in there. You are going to click the Prepare Form field, which is on the right side of the panel, the panel list that's on your screen. And you'll click Prepare Form. It's the purple button, and it will ask you, do you want to use the form that you're currently in, or do you want to scan a new document? So you're going to say you want to use the form that you're currently in, and make sure that the form field auto detection is turned on. That will help you just kind of get that first start. And when you've got those two things done, you're just going to hit start. Adobe will auto-populate the fields for you. Now, it tries, it is not successful. I would say it's about 80% of the time it gets it pretty close, but it's going to miss some fields. So that's when your job comes in to make that PDF work for what you need it. So let's say you open up this field, this form, and you see the LSCID field is filled in, but it's super long. You don't want it to look weird with it being, too long. All you have to do is click on that field. It will allow you to move it around to anywhere you want. And then you can also double click on any of the fields to open up the properties window. So when you do that, the properties window opens up. There's many things that you can do in this properties window. You can change the font size, you can change the font type, you can change the alignment of the font if you want all of your text to be centered in your field, or if you want it to be all left justified, or anything like that. You can change it to where your font automatically sizes to be whatever size is works best for your particular field. And then one of the things that people a lot of times don't realize, and I see this a lot when I'm filling in fillable forms personally, that is that I'm filling in a field, but my information is too long for the field, and so it will cut off. And if you print it out or something like that, the field will be cut off. So one of the tools that will be helpful to you is under the Options tab. There's a button that says Multi-Line, which is what I have checked here. That will automatically create multiple lines in your fields if it runs out of space. So that's just a little tip that I've found is helpful. Then if you have a form like this, that it fills in some of the fields, but it's very common for it not to fill in checkboxes. So that's an easy fix. There are at the top of your screen, you'll see the quick access buttons, and you'll see they have the text box, they have a checkbox, a radio button, drop downs, all of those kinds of things. So all you have to do is just select the checkbox that you're wanting to use, or the field that you're wanting to use. In this case, it's a checkbox. And then it will come up on your screen and it'll look like this. And then you'll see that yellow area is with the field name. That's where you're going to change it to whatever field name you want or leave it. It will auto-populate a field name that's usually pretty generic if it's not really sure. And then you just take those blue boxes outside of your checkbox to resize it, and then put it wherever it needs to go. It's really that simple. And then while you're working through your things, on the right-hand side, when you click on that Prepare Form panel, it will pull this section up, and it'll be available the entire time that you're working on your form. And in here, it's just a easy place for you to see where all of your fields are located, which fields they are, what their names are. And in this panel, you can rename your fields, you can reorder your fields, you can change your font alignment, and all of that. And then you can also preview. I definitely recommend previewing your form before you finish anything, because it's going to, it may not always look exactly like you think it will. So call these pro tips. I would definitely not consider myself a pro, but I couldn't think of any other way to just give you information that I have kind of found out, but just by trial and error. So the first thing I found out is if you're inserting multiple checkboxes, like in that form that we were just looking at, that checkbox had to be inserted like 12 different times, and every single checkbox was the same. Instead of like killing yourself trying to make individual checkboxes, just create one that's the perfect size and shape, and then copy and paste it, and then rename that field for each individual checkbox. And don't forget, if your checkbox gets too tiny, always remember you can zoom in and make that checkbox larger. So you can make it the perfect size. If you're like me, I want my checkboxes to fit perfectly on top of the checkbox in the form. Otherwise, it's not good enough. So if you do that, though, remember that Adobe, if uses the field names to identify where the text goes. So if you copy and paste, you have to make sure you rename, because if you copy and paste and don't rename, you will see checkbox 1 every single time. And when one person checks checkbox 1, it will check every single checkbox 1, all 12 of them. So just don't forget to rename. And again, you can just double click to rename your field, or you rename it in that panel on the side. The other thing that I have found over the years is, have you ever worked on a form that's been created fillable for you, and you start on your first tab and you're like, this is great, and then you click tab and it jumps to like the bottom of the page and you're like, what is that about? Well, that's because the person who created the form forgot to rearrange the order of their form. So in this situation, if we created a checkbox, that checkbox automatically goes to the very bottom of your form. And when that person tabs through to go to the next area, it's going to tab them it's going to skip right over that. So in that panel, just drag your field in the order that it would make sense to you logically for your tab to go along when you're tabbing through the document, so that it makes a smooth for the user. And finally, I said this already, but make sure that you always use the preview tool and test out your form by filling out every field on your own. So fill it out as if you were the person creating the form. I promise you will not regret it, because otherwise you're going to get people telling you that this checkbox doesn't work, or this one, whatever. So just do yourself a favor and preview that form. Okay. The next one is we're moving right along. We're going to move into how to create an online form using an online form program. There are lots of different options for this. I have used a couple different ones. My favorite is to use JotForm. JotForm is I believe they do have a free version. I do have a subscription, which makes it a little bit easier because you don't have to worry about number of submissions, and I think you get more access to things. The subscription is not very expensive, but this is a really handy tool when you are trying to collect information and not do things via email, because you can always email a form to somebody and they can email it back. But if you're like me, you get a lot of emails in a day, and you risk losing track of things. And so if I can ever make it fully online, where I have a central repository where I have everything, like in JotForm where it saves my files, makes it super easy. So the website is www.jotform.com. And no, I don't work for them. I just like the product. And when you go you just click create a new form, and then you can choose between start from scratch, start from a template, or import a form. You would click import form, and it would look like this, and you would just click import PDF form on here. And it's going to do the exact same thing that Adobe did. It's going to look at your form, and it's going to try and figure out what it thinks that you want. And again, it's not going to do it right. As you can see on this one, it did 2 fields. So sorry, if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, this is going to be the form, the image of the form that I uploaded. And on the left-hand side is what the online form looks like. So if you look at the right-hand side of the screen where the form is, it has missing fields and things like that. So I'm going to have to go through and edit those to make sure that my form fills in properly. So the first thing that is really nice about JotForm is it's super user-friendly. So what it does, when you click on your form and your field to say, I want to edit this, it will draw this nice little arrow on your screen, and it'll say, hey, by the way, this is where your field is lining up on the form. So there's no question as to where this form is pulling information to and from. And you can change any of the titles of the descriptions on your field. So let's say you have, I see this a lot with when we're doing registrations, and students don't know what a class number is. They don't equate those same terms. So on our form, it may say class, please enter the class number. On your form, it might say please enter the registration number, right? Because that might make more sense to them. And it will still fill into the field that you want, but you are now giving them better direction as to what you're looking for. And then again, just like in Adobe, you can move your forms around and you can put them wherever you need. And the other really cool thing about this is you can collect a real signature. So the student can sign the document with their mouse, and it will put that signature into the document. And it's not like Adobe where it just says this is digitally signed. It actually shows the signature, and then it's date and time stamped as well, which is nice for tracking purposes. So let's say you are wanting to add a field. On the left side of the screen, you'll see a button that says Add Form Element. And you would click that, and then you would choose the appropriate option. In this case, I chose short text entry, I think is what it's called. And it will populate it with, it'll automatically put it in a box at the top of your screen, and it's going to say this is where we're going to put it. You figure out where it's going to go further from here. So you will rename your document, and then again it shows you that cool little blue arrow. It's going to show you this is exactly where it's going to go, and all you have to do is take your box and you drop it into the right place, just like I have it named with my arrow there. So again, really simple, really user friendly, and it does some really cool things. So once your form is submitted, this is what it will come back to you as. So it will look like exactly like if you had, typed it up on your computer, and JotForm will automatically, I did zero work for this. I did this yesterday, and I filled in my fields on my online form. And then I sent it in, and this was emailed to me. And so it saved you a lot of time. And not only was it emailed to me, but it also was saved in this online form, so I can go pull it at any time. I don't have to dig through my email. So that is a really great use of a really great way to kind of just make things a little bit easier on you. So with my pro tips again, on this one, so you might be asking yourself, okay, well, this is cool technology, but like, why would I pay potentially to pay for a JotForm subscription when I can really just use Adobe Form? So one of the things that I did just recently, and this was during the pandemic, and I'll show you on this page, you can actually route this to multiple people. So if you've ever closed on a house or refinanced on a house, you've probably used DocuSign. DocuSign is a great program because it allows you to like review documents and verify it and sign it, and then it just automatically routes it to the next person. Well, we don't have DocuSign. It's quite expensive. You get to pay per page and per document and things like that. And so this basically does the same thing as long as you're willing to put a little bit of work into manipulating it. So for this page, for example, the student had to fill out the top portion, and they had to put their information in. And then there was a question that I added onto the form that said, please describe yourself. And it said, I'm a student or I'm a counselor. And when the student selected, I'm a student, it automatically took them straight to the bottom of the page, and it said submit. And I had conditions set up in this form to where if a student, depending on the high school that they selected, it would automatically send an email to that high school counselor. And so when that student submitted that form, JotForm then sent an email to that high school counselor, and it said, hey, Shannon Oliver submitted her form. Click this link to go take a look at it and edit it. So then the counselor would get that email. They would click on the link in the email, and it would take them to that exact same form that the student submitted with their information. They'd review it and make sure it looks good. Then they would say on that question, I'm a student or I'm a counselor. You say I'm a counselor, and then it would fill in the remainder of the questions that they answered. So then they answered the second half of their page with the courses and the high school and their signature, and then they submitted it a second time, and then it came to me. And then I know it's completely done, it's verified. I'm not having to pass this document around myself. It's all done through the program. And so that was a huge time saver for me, because we had over, I think 400 students that completed this form. And I can't even imagine the nightmare it might have been if we hadn't done things this way. So that's just something that I've learned, and really helpful tip for me. So I kind of just explained this a little bit before, but if you are working with a form that maybe isn't as clear, this is a great way for you to make things super clear. We know that our students don't always read, and so this is a great way for you to make it as error-free as possible on your end. There's less back and forth, and making sure that your form is completed correctly every time. So the other thing that's nice about it is if your form doesn't have something that you actually need at the top, like for instance, for some reason your form doesn't have a student ID listed, and you're constantly like writing at the top of the page when you print it out, you can always add whatever fields you want into your JOT form, have the student fill that out, and then just put it anywhere on the page, at the top of the page, bottom of the page, wherever, and then when you print it, it prints it on there for you, and it's an added convenience for you. And then again, my last tip is, not surprisingly, always use the preview tool and test out your form. So make sure to, if you're going to do conditions, which is when you have it, only show certain questions based on their previous answers, or you're going to use the routing tool like I did, where you're going to route it to certain people, make sure that you test it with yourself. Make sure that you submit a form and have it send an email to you, and go through that, because you will definitely thank yourself, and you'll want to make sure that you have it correct before you send it out into the world. All right. And our last one is, so those two were more about forms and collecting information. This last one is all about analyzing information. And this is where we're going to get a little bit technical. So if you've never used VLOOKUP before, just hang in there. I will try and go through it as slowly as I can, because it can get a little confusing, but it is a wonderful tool once you learn how to use it. So first thing is, you might be asking is, so what in the world is VLOOKUP and why would I need it? So let me tell you, VLOOKUP or formulas in general might look scary, but VLOOKUP is your friend. If in my world, we have close to 5,000 6,000 enrollments of students in dual credit. There is absolutely no way that we can go and look at every single account and check for holds and check to make sure that they, whatever the case is, check test scores, whatever it is, we just can't. It's just not possible with our small team. And so VLOOKUP was something that my team and I learned out of necessity. You can use it when you have two different spreadsheets that you're trying to compare data from, and the spreadsheet isn't this, all the information that you need isn't on one single place. So you're running two different queries, and this query has contact information, and this query has holds, but you want to email them and you can't put them together. So that's what VLOOKUP is going to help you do. So let's look at an example. So in my world, of course, again, I'm a dual credit person, outreach person. So the first thing that came to mind was dual credit registration. So let's say that I have a list of dual credit students that my high school provided to me, and all they gave me was their name, their student ID number, and the classes that they want to take, and that's it. And I need to know if all of those students are eligible to be registered and if they have a business office hold on their account, because I can't register them if they owe money, right? So instead of looking up each one of these student accounts individually, we're going to use VLOOKUP to make it quick and easy to check for a business office hold. So let's try it. This is a very short version. Obviously, when you're working with things like this, you're going to have much longer lists. But for the purposes of today, I just wanted to do a short list. So here is on the left side is my original dual credit list that's provided by my high school. And on the right side is my query that I ran that shows me which students have a BO2 hold, which is a business office hold. And the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take both of these spreadsheets and you are going to put them in the same workbook, but in separate worksheets. And I recommend that you rename your tabs just because it makes it easier and cleaner with your formula later to know exactly where it's pulling. So you're going to want to name your first one, whatever your list is. So in this situation, we're going to call it dual credit list. And the second one, we're going to call it the balance due list. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to find out what is the common data set between these two fields. So in this particular situation, it's the ID. That's the thing that we have that's the same on both spreadsheets. So once you've identified that, you're going to go to your first tab that you're going to want to pull the information onto. And that for me is my high school list tab. So in my high school list tab, I'm going to add a new column and I'm going to type in the words equal VLOOKUP, and then I'm going to open parentheses. Okay. And then I'm going to click on the the cell that I'm wanting to compare my data to. So that is my ID number cell, and that in this case is A2. And then I'm going to do comma, and I'm going to then move over to my second spreadsheet, my second tab, which is my balance due list. I'm going to highlight the whole range of ID numbers that I want to pull in. And you can either type this in or you can, like I said, highlight it and drag it, and it will automatically fill in this balance due A2 to A16. You will need to add the dollar signs. The dollar signs is it has to do with absolute value, and it tells Excel basically, don't change these fields when I'm moving around and I'm moving formulas around. Always look in these particular cells the entire time, because when you're copying formulas, it's gonna it just tells it to basically stay where you are. And then after that, the last two are easy. Those never change. It's going to be 1 and false. Then you close your parentheses, and it's going to give you your formula. So this is an example of my formula here, exactly like I showed on the last screen. It says VLOOKUP and balance due. It's checked. What it's done is it's taking A2, which is the ID number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it is comparing it to all the fields in A2 to A16 in tab number 2. And it is going to find the matching ID number in that field, and it's going to pull it into my first tab. So what that means is I know that Riley Davis has a balance. And I know that I can't register Riley Davis because he has a balance on his account, because he appears on my balance due list. Without me having to go and look for that ID number, I'm able to find that. Then, once I have my very first formula, the easy next step is you are going to double click that green square. When you highlight your cell, you'll see that little green square in the bottom right hand corner. You're going to double click on that, and Excel is smart enough to know that when you click that, it will automatically populate all the remaining fields with that same exact formula, but for that particular row. So when I did that, if we look at Catherine Smith, it took Catherine Smith's ID number in the A column, and it looked for her ID number in the entire range in the second sheet, and it pulled that in. And now I can see that the two students that have NA, that means that Excel couldn't find them on the original, when it searched for tab 2 on the balance due spreadsheet, it couldn't find them. So that tells me they don't have a balance. They are good to go. They are ready to register. And from here, all you have to do is you can apply a filter, and you can sort out all of your NAs, and then you can very easily see who your students are that are not eligible, or vice versa. You can easily see who the students are that don't have that hold. And so that just saved me. Now, in this situation, I could have obviously looked up 8 students or whatever this number is, but let's say I had 800. There is just no way that I could have looked up all of those students. So this has really saved me a ton of time in looking up individually. So some tips on here is you can add as many VLOOKUP formulas in a spreadsheet as you need, depending on how much data you will be comparing. So one of the things that we do is when we are doing a dual credit registration, we need to look at every single hold that they may have. And so then we need to know if they have a business office hold, if they have a residency hold, if they have a biodemographic hold, all of the things that may keep them from registering. I have to do a separate VLOOKUP formula for each of those holds. And so there's no limit to the number of tabs that you can put into a spreadsheet, and there's no limit to the number of VLOOKUP formulas that you can put in. And so you can create many things as you want. Really, it's kind of up to you as to how you want to use your data. So I mentioned this a little bit previously. There is, you'll want to always use your $sign when you're using VLOOKUP. That's that absolute cell value that makes sure that the formula works properly. And so if you ever use it, that's going to be something that you'll want to include. And one of the things that I sometimes see in, and this is specific to numbers, but one of the things that I see a lot when I'm working with my formulas, if I create my formula and it says NA down the entire list, sometimes there's just a problem with the background information in the data. So one of the common problems that I see is we have a student ID number that when it starts with 0, Excel automatically formats it to be 6 digits instead of 7 digits, which we know when it's searching for a 7-digit number on tab 1 and a 6-digit number on tab 2, they're not going to line up. And so one of the things that you can do to work around that is you'll want to format your cell, right click on all of your fields that you're comparing, format your cells, and change them all to the same format. And so in that case, you would change them to all be 7 digits, no matter what the numbers are. You want them to all be 7 digits, and that's something that you can do in the format cells field. And that's not on here, but that's just another little tip that I came up with. The other thing is don't forget to remove any duplicate values on your list. So if your spreadsheet has, instead of head count, it has enrollment, and every single student may be on there 2 or 3 times, I would suggest just removing those duplicate values just to make your life a little bit easier, so that your data is a little bit cleaner. And then finally, you can take this formula even further and use it to pull in specific fields rather than in this situation where we just pulled in IDs. So let's say I had a spreadsheet that had the not only do they have a business office hold, but they tell me that it's a business office hold of the amount. So I can formulate this, use this formula and take it a step further and have it pull in not the ID number, but the amount. It will look for that ID number, and then it will go and look for the amount that's in a certain column that you're trying to find, and it will pull in that amount. And that's super helpful. Like, let's say your data doesn't have email addresses, and you have contact information on this document and student information, class enrollment, and you want to tell them, hey, register for another class. Come on, but you don't have that data. All you have to do is do this VLOOKUP and tell it to look in this, pull in a very specific field. I didn't include that training in here today because I thought it was a little bit too complicated. I didn't want to confuse you guys, but I do have a step-by-step guide that I created on how to pull that data in. So if you need it, just let me know. I'm happy to share that with you and provide you with that information. So we have about 10 minutes left of our session. I got you guys out just in time for you to take a lunch. But I would love to hear from you if you have any questions or if you need clarifications. Hopefully this session was useful and that you'll be able to use this in your everyday work. And I'll look forward to hearing from you guys and hearing what kind of cool data projects you were able to do with it.
And so far, I'm not seeing any specific questions, but I do have a lot of requests for your PowerPoint to be shared, as well as that last little resource that you were just talking about.
Okay. I will absolutely do that. Probably what we'll do, since we have a lot of people asking, is Dallas is our wonderful website guru, and she's going to put this video up on the website, and I'll just ask her to put, I can email it to you guys as well, but I'll also ask her to put the PowerPoint on the website. How does that work? And you guys can go pull it down and access it that way as well. Thank you guys.
All right, I'm collecting all the emails that are being sent in the chat and Q&A, and it looks like we've got one question that says, were you able to look up each student and see what they're qualified to take and send emails to them as enrollment campaign?
So we could do that. You would have to, I guess, kind of identify what you're looking for. But like in that situation, let's say when you say qualified to take, you can say you want to know what their test scores are, because you want to know if they're in developmental co-requisite, or if they're eligible to take Math 1314 or 2412. All you would need to do would be to run a query that has all of maybe your applied but not enrolled students, or your currently enrolled students, and then pull a query that has test scores. And then you would be able to combine those two, and then you can filter out, okay, I know I've pulled in what their math scores are, and now I know that all of these students that have a 620 on their SAT now can take Calculus 1, and I can reach out to them and say, hey, did you know you are qualified to take Cal 1? Here's the course information. So there's really no limit to how you can use your data. You just be creative, as long as you have a way to pull that data initially through queries or through the data that you collect through, any different situation. You'll be able to kind of manipulate and use them together. So I don't know if that answered your question. Oh, I'm glad that helped you, Elsa. Thank you for that feedback. Thanks for that feedback, Dennis.